Back on the Chad Hasty Show, News Talk 790 KFYO. Thank you very much for tuning in. Let's head to the phones, and joining us, he's on the campaign trail. He's been on the campaign trail with Ted Cruz running for president, and joining us right now, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, who you probably saw standing right behind Cruz on the night of the South Carolina primary. And Lieutenant Governor, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Hey, Chad, great to be with you. That was South Carolina. It already seems like a month ago, even though it was just a day and a half ago. We flew the 6-hour jaunt out here from Columbia, South Carolina to Las Vegas in time for a Cruz rally last night. The Glenn Beck and David Barton appeared, and getting ready. I'm going on MSNBC, hit, I think, around noon your time, but and then heading to a Cruz rally after that, and we'll be working the caucus tomorrow. It's crunch time now, Chad. 60% of all the Republican delegates will be selected by March 15th, and that's about 3 weeks or less. And of course, our big primary in Texas, I'm the chair for the Cruz campaign in Texas, as you know, is Tuesday, but it's already started. And Chad, I will tell you that looking at statewide numbers and top Republican county numbers, we're just blasting through the roof on turnout. We will break all records for turnout. It's been a long time since our voters have had a chance to pick our Republican nominee. Yeah. And, of course, I hope it's Ted Cruz.
Well, and Republicans are absolutely excited about this race and many of the races out there, as opposed to the Democrats, which they're seeing the enthusiasm drop off with the Democrats. Let me ask you, you bring up March 15th. Yes. And the large number of delegates that will be thrown out by March 15th, how important is it for Senator Cruz to pick up not only Texas but a few key other states out there?
Well, it's very important. In fact, what I said in my interviews in South Carolina was that it's a two-man race now, and I realize there are 5 people in the race, but Carson is not going to win the nomination, and Kasich isn't going to win the nomination. They have a right to stay as long as they want, but they're not going to win. So then you say, okay, it's down to 3, as Rubio likes to say. But the truth is, going to your point of where Ted's going to win, and we can kind of walk through that in a second. But the question is, where is Rubio going to win? He hasn't won a state. He's the only candidate, Cruz is the only candidate to beat Trump so far in Iowa. Rubio hasn't won. He's not going to win Texas, which is the big prize next Tuesday. 155 of the 500 and some delegates are in Texas. And I don't see any state that Rubio is going to win on Super Tuesday. So it effectively is a two-person race, because you can't win the nomination if you don't win a state. And eventually his money will start to dry up. Ted has enough money to run to the finish line, and Ted will win Texas next week. The margin is what I'm working on, to make it as big as possible, to win as many of the 155 delegates, because we're a proportionate state. I can kind of walk through that very quickly as well in a second. But then I think Ted's going to do very well in states like Georgia, states like Tennessee, states like Arkansas, and others where he's been working for a long time. And on Super Tuesday, you have 11 other states besides Texas. And at the end of the day, the only 2 people who are going to win those states are Cruz and Trump, and they'll divide those states. You take a guy like Kasich. We have Super Tuesday. He's only campaigning for one of those states, Michigan.
Right.
I understand and respect the fact that anyone can stand as long as they want, but let's face it, Kasich can only win one state, Ohio, and he might not even win that one, which is March 15th. That's a winner take all. But should you be running for president if your strategy is to win one state? I think it's a disservice to all the voters and a disservice to all the candidates. And for Ben Carson, who's just a terrific guy. You love the guy. Brilliant brain surgeon. But he's at 7%. And you have to ask yourself, okay, isn't it time to remove those 2 off the stage and let this really get down to the last 3? Because it's going to be Cruz, Trump, or Rubio. And, again, I don't think it's Rubio, because I don't think he can win a state. So that's kind of the state of the game, and Ted will win Texas. He'll do well. There may be a surprise. He wins a state you don't expect, and he doesn't win a state you do expect, but he and Trump will split up the states on Super Tuesday.
Do you think Cruz gets over 50% in Texas?
Well, that's the goal. It's hard. With 5 people in the race, it's just hard to get 50% or more, and that's the key to win the delegates in Texas. But here's the flip side of that, and it gets really complicated. In fact, after looking at this close up, we need to relook at how we give out our delegates, because it confuses the voters a little bit. For example, if you don't get 20% of the vote, you don't get any delegates. So you have to get 20%. So is Kasich going to get 20 in Texas? No. Is Carson going to get 20 in Texas? No. But they will siphon some votes away from Ted and probably from Marco. But they're going to siphon some votes away because those votes would go somewhere. But they're not going to crack 20. So they can't get any delegates. So if I were on Fox, and look, they can't know everything about every state, but the real question to these guys, why are you even running in Texas? You can't win a delegate. And then Rubio may not get 20% in Texas. So now you get down to Cruz and Trump. So the way we do it, Chad, in Texas is we have 36 congressional districts. If you get more than 50% in any one congressional district, you get all three of those delegates. So 36 times 3 is 108. That's 108 of our 155 delegates are chosen that way. So let's say in a congressional district that Trump and Rubio get 18 each. That's 36. And let's say that Carson and Kasich get a few more. So and they get, between all of them, they get over 50, but no one gets over 20. So if Ted is at 45% in a congressional district and no one else is at 20, Ted gets all three delegates. Or if Ted is over 50 in any congressional district, he gets all three. If two people, are over 20 but below 50, then they divide them 2 and 1. It's a little complicated, but it's the way it's done in Texas. It has always been done that way. And then the other delegates are chosen statewide proportionally. And again, if you don't get 20%, you can't get any delegates. So, look, Carson and Kasich, and again, Rubio may not crack 20%. So in Texas, Cruz will get and Trump will get whatever delegates there are, and our goal is to get Cruz as many of those. So, and here's a small point, and that people overlook also. Of our 36 congressmen in Texas, those congressional districts, we have some Democrats. So there are 3 delegates in the Democrat districts as well. So if you take, and I think West Texas folks, I'm trying to think of a Democrat everybody kind of knows, Sheila Jackson Lee from Houston. Well, her district is about 75% Democrat, 25% Republican. There's a Republican primary. And so it's not a lot of voters, but if you can get more than 50% of the Republicans in her district, you get all 3 of those delegates. So whether it's a Democrat or Republican district, it's 3 delegates per district if you can get more than 50%, or if no one gets over 20 except you get them all. So Ted will do very well. He's got a ground game and a great team of volunteers everywhere drilling down to that. So I think Texas will be good for him. It'll pick up several other states. And by next Wednesday, I think they'll be clear that Rubio should get out of the race. Whether he does or not, I don't know.
I have about a minute left. I want to ask you a question that's been brought up a few times here on the show, and that is, do you think in order to beat Donald Trump, either Rubio or Cruz has to get out of the race?
You could make that argument because, if you look at Donald Trump, here's the bottom line. Look, and I respect the fact that, we've never seen anything like this. I respect the fact that people support him and that some of your listeners may be supporting him. But the question you have to ask is, who would he appoint to the Supreme Court, number one? I have no idea, and I know who Ted would, strict constitutional conservatives, and they will be there long after whoever the next president is. They'll be there for 20 or 30 years. And Donald has switched positions, but he switched positions on every issue. It'd be one thing if you said, well, I've changed my mind on abortion and pro-life, but he's changed his position on everything after having those positions for his entire life. And now,
multiple times in some cases.
And so, but two out of every 3 voters get it. 2 out of every 3 voters are not voting for Trump. I mean, he gets 30. Or you can look at it another way. He got 32% in South Carolina. That meant almost 7 out of every 10 voters didn't vote for him. So obviously he's winning based on a split field. And if you take Cruz and Rubio's votes together, they win. So the sooner we get down to 2, which I think will be after Tuesday, the reality, then Ted has that shot to take him on head-to-head and take him out. Because if Rubio doesn't win a state, or maybe he wins one small one, but if he doesn't have any delegates, and it's time for the gamesmanship to be over. They've had a long primary. They've had lots of debates. At this point, I'll give Jeb Bush credit. Jeb Bush did the right thing for the party and for the country. He knew he couldn't win. Why continue to take people's money and get them to support a candidate who can't win?
Right.
And I hope a lot of the Bush supporters, and there aren't a lot in Texas, but I hope they will support the Ted. So we finally have the Christian conservative candidate, Chad, we've always wanted. But we're in this unusual year of a lot of candidates who are staying in, and then a Donald Trump, and that makes the road tougher without question. One other quick race, Chad, real quick, and I don't endorse. I'm very careful with my endorsements. But Eva Guzman is running for our own Supreme Court. She's running against a guy who has run before for different offices, and he's only voted, to my record show, one time in a Republican primary his whole life. I would argue a Democrat tried to steal a race in a Republican primary. Eva Guzman has been on the Supreme Court. She's endorsed by Governor Abbott, myself, and every conservative organization. So for all of your folks out there, please vote for Eva Guzman for the Supreme Court. Very important. Mike Massengale is also running for the court. I haven't endorsed him, but another top candidate who I'd like to see elected. But Eva Guzman, very important, great conservative justice. And I don't want to see someone crossing over what I would call a Democrat candidate into our primary or opponent to try to steal that race.
Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, as always, appreciate your time. We'll visit with you as you continue on the campaign trail with Senator Ted Cruz.
Absolutely. We'll be working hard here in Nevada, but can't wait to get back to some home cooking in Texas.
There you go. Lieutenant Governor, thank you. That's Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick.